All right, so let's start this broadcast with a big story that has in fact come in from France, where France is bracing itself up for a fresh day of street protests. The trade unions and garbage collectors have resumed their protests over the controversial new pension changes that have been brought about by Emmanuel Macron. And today's protest is in fact the 12th straight round of stir, and it comes ahead of the Constitutional Council's ruling on the legality of the bill that has been bulldozed in the French legislature without even a vote. If the council approves it, then the government will be entitled to publicize the law. Now, the Paris garbage collectors have also resumed their strike. The protesters blocked an access road to the council with the garbage bins. The protesters were also seen setting up flares at the Louis Vuitton headquarters in Paris. The similar protests were, of course, held at the railway station in Paris. The protesters chanted anti-pension reform slogans. The many trains are expected to be cancelled because of the protests that are being held across Paris today.
It's the beginning of a Paris garbage sector's mobilization. So incinerator workers, garbage collectors are on strike until further notice, until the withdrawal of the pension reform.
The French President Emmanuel Macron has said that he'll organize a meeting with the unions after the council's decision, and according to experts, the widespread discomfort with the government is going to have some long-term repercussions. The violent protests against the pension bill were seen in the initial days of the protests. Pitched battles between the protesters and the police had become a bit of a regular thing in the French capital, besides the civic amenities that have ground to a virtual standstill in large parts of the city. And to give us more updates as to what the situation at this moment in Paris is, we're being joined in by Natalie Malgus. She's joining us live from Paris on this broadcast. Natalie, bring us up to speed with what is unfolding on the streets of Paris at this moment, because the French government under Emmanuel Macron, it appears, is not willing to backtrack on the pension reforms that it is trying to push through the legislatures. But the protesters are not yielding their ground as well, and they've virtually paralyzed the city.
In fact, that's what we've seen on a near weekly basis since the start of the year. We're at the starting blocks of today's demonstration, which is the 12th round of social action here in the streets of Paris. These broad boulevards are going to be filled with hundreds of thousands of protesters. The exact numbers we won't know for quite some time, but already there are quite a few people gathering. They're being met by quite a strong show of force, with the police that have cordoned off several streets already. They have barricaded several essential structures and made sure that they are out in their numbers today. There is quite the impasse between the unions and most Parisians here who don't want the government to follow through with these pension reforms. But as we know, tomorrow, in just over 24 hours' time, the Constitutional Council will deliver a verdict on the constitutionality of those policies.
Absolutely indeed, and also the fact that the government of Emmanuel Macron decided to push through these controversial pension reforms, as Macron's government has dubbed it, without a vote in the French parliament. You know, how is that being viewed by the protesters there in France?
Many of the protesters, including some of the opposition parties, have said it seems as though the French government is just running the show as they want to, with no consideration from the electorate and from the broader voting base here in Paris. And you can see by the sheer number of protesters who turn up for these demonstrations every week that there is a great deal of dissatisfaction. Many share those sentiments, that the government is just running with these policies and reforms, the idea of what it wants to carry out, without real consideration from what the people want.
Absolutely indeed. Natalie Malgas, thank you very much indeed for joining us from Paris and getting us all those details. We'll of course come back to you as more details emerge in this story that is unfolding in the French capital as we speak. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.